Hello, Mr. Gorbachev. It's so great to have you with us today.
Good to see you again.
Mr. Gorbachev, you're turning 80. Did you ever think the world would look like this on your 80th birthday?
It's not easy to surprise people like me. Those who live to see their 80th birthday have seen a lot in life. 80 is a lot. We should thank God for giving us so many years. And because at 80 you already know a lot, you've experienced many things. I can't view life in a primitive way.
Do you think life is safer today compared to the late 80s?
If we look at the Middle East, for example, in most countries where people took to the streets demanding resignation of their leaders, these leaders have been in power for 20 or 30 years. It is unbelievable. Mubarak has ruled Egypt for 29 years. As for Gaddafi, we are all confused about the actual date when his rule began. So I think we were right when we said there should be a limit. Otherwise, people got tired of the same leaders. In addition, after 10 years or so, you get nepotism. Leaders become too preoccupied to take care of the things that are really important. That's why we decided that the maximum term for the General Secretary, the Chairman of the Council of Ministers, and others would be 10 years. After 10 years, they had to step down.
So you think 10 years is the ideal period for a head of state?
Yes, of course. Many of those people are very capable. They can be very useful in other areas. But it is important to have rotation. Young people should not feel like they are locked in a box, lest they upset the system built on nepotism. I feel concerned when I look at the world today. Lenin, whom I respect, once said, "Don't be afraid of chaos." We see a lot of chaos around. Chaos produces new forms of life. It is true. So these troubles too will pass. It won't be easy, of course. Changes are never easy. But this will be a step to a better future.
Sir, you often say that what you regret most is the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Do you think that it could exist in 2011? What it would have been like today had it not disintegrated?
It could exist even longer. It should have become a union of sovereign states.
With a communist regime?
Being a union of sovereign states means that each sovereign state has the right to make its own choice. The conditions we were in required that we practice what the Constitution said. And the constitutions of the Soviet republics said they were states entitled to self-determination. That's why we should have made them sovereign states.
With different regimes, different political systems? Do you mean that some countries could be democratic while others remain communist?
No, I think they all would have followed the same scenario. Because they would be making their choice at a stage when they were still close to each other in many respects. So if something would change in one state, others would follow. They would have been like communicating vessels. Today, 60 or 70% of people say they regret that the Soviet Union fell apart. But when you ask them if they want the Soviet Union to be restored, only 9% say yes.
Do you blame yourself for the fall of the Soviet Union?
No, I fought the best I could to defend the Soviet Union, but I failed.
Why do you think the CIS fell apart? It is practically non-existent.
That's because of the political situation we had in our country after 1989. The elite played a role there. After 1989, we had the coup. First, they tried to overthrow Gorbachev using political means, but they failed because people supported Gorbachev.
I always wanted to ask you, during the coup, when you were isolated, what did you feel?
I knew anything could happen. It was not just a feeling, I knew it. They tried to provoke us and get us to start shooting. And then they would document that and have the right to shoot back and kill us.
What were you afraid the most for? Your life? Your country?
No, for my family. And of course, I thought that it was not going to be just my family. Other people may suffer too. I knew there would be bloodshed, especially if you consider how big our country is. It takes our country a while to start, but when it does, it is very hard to stop. So my goal was to renew the country without bloodshed.
When you started the perestroika, could you imagine the scale of the changes to come?
I think I did, but not completely. It is dangerous to start a storm in our country. If you lose control, you may get into a lot of trouble. Khrushchev's reforms basically failed, and Kosygин's reforms failed. We realized from experience that it was dangerous to wait much longer, that we had to take a risk. But we couldn't postpone it. We needed changes.
You were saying that you didn't quite understand the scale of it all. When did you finally get a clear realization that there was no return to the past?
I don't agree when people say that perestroika failed. It didn't fail. It was disrupted, derailed, stopped. But still, perestroika achieved a lot. Inside Russia, we had democracy, free elections, freedom of conscience, private property, freedom to travel abroad, everything. Also, glasnost. There was so much openness, the entire country was affected. People realized they had finally got some freedom, an opportunity to act. In foreign affairs, we put an end to the Cold War. We normalized our relationship with the US. We reunited Germany. We didn't send our tanks or troops there. All our units in Eastern Europe stayed where they were.
Sir, let's talk about foreign policy. 25 years ago, you started the process of disarmament between the Soviet Union and the United States. Today, Presidents Obama and Medvedev are making further steps to get rid of nuclear arsenals. Do you think we will ever come to a world without nuclear weapons?
We must do it, and I believe that sooner or later we will get there. But to get there, we have to put the world back in order first. Nuclear arsenals were significantly reduced thanks to our efforts during perestroika. Today, when the world is so divided, we need to find things that bring us together. For instance, the G20 is a step which brings us closer. It's an instrument, a mechanism for handling the hardest and most challenging issues. But we need more than that. It's a matter of learning to live in a global world.
2 years ago, you and I discussed Barack Obama, and that was during the elections before he became president. And you said that the United States needed its own perestroika and that Obama seemed to be the right man to carry it out. Has Obama lived up to your expectations as a president?
I think he's been doing a good job so far. By the way, I met with him when he was in Moscow. I told him, your approval rating is still high, that's great. But remember, as soon as you get to some real big issues, it'll drop. You should be ready for that. He said, I understand that. I think the fact that he got his healthcare bill approved is terrific, but rich Republicans don't like it. I admire him because when things get hot, for example, when they had to get the New START treaty ratified, he got involved personally. He talked to people, and about 12 senators changed sides and sided with the Democrats. And eventually the treaty was ratified. I wish him good luck.
What would you say is the difference between 20th century and 21st century politicians?
That depends on politicians we take as examples. If we take Hitler, then every politician in the 20th or the 21st century is very different from him. If we talk about the 1980s, it was a time when we saw a large group of politicians from Asia, America and Europe join forces to stop the nuclear arms race and begin disarmament with the ultimate goal of uniting the world. I think we should give them credit for that. It was a very interesting time.
Some people consider you the #1 politician of the 20th century.
Always remember, when you are #1, there's great responsibility that comes with that. Actually, though, you can't give a single politician credit for everything. There is always a group of people who realize the challenges of their time. They understand what is going on in the world.
Who do you think has the potential to become the politician of the 21st century?
We'll have to wait and see.
No one you can name at this point?
No, I would not give that title to anyone for now. They have to earn it. No one praised us until we walked the talk. Today's politicians are not even at the talking point yet, but what matters is what they will do, the steps they will take, their policies. We know from history that every time there was a new challenge, a new leader would emerge. Sometimes they emerged too late, After some damage was done, we have to avoid that. We have to act in time.
Mr. Gorbachev, to many people, you played a major role in many important events. The unification of Germany, the end of the Cold War, perestroika. Some people say that you are the one who brought down the Soviet Union. You were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Some say that you are the last real liberal of our time. What do you think is your most important legacy?
I think it is the fact that the world is no longer divided, that it is mostly free from ideological antagonism. This is perhaps the most important thing. This creates conditions for further progress.
People abroad love you and respect you a lot, while Russians have different opinions about you. What do you make of that fact that you're more appreciated abroad than in Russia?
I think it's normal. After all, I worked here in Russia, and many things started here. It wasn't always easy. Many things did not work out the way we planned. At the beginning, when we made our first mistakes, we didn't really explain to people what was going on and didn't get them involved in all those processes. We were self-confident. But in public politics, I don't think we have ever lost a major battle.
What about now? What are your priorities in life today?
My priority is to help people realize that there are other people around them and conduct themselves accordingly. In fact, that's what religion teaches, that you should help your neighbor. And many people have this understanding. They are willing to help others, support them. So the most important thing is to remember about other people and their problems.
You're 80. The whole world is celebrating your birthday at the end of March in London. Few people who can say, I made this world a better place. But you can say that about yourself. You have your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. What do you lack?
There are a few things I didn't have time to do, and I regret it. I miss my wife, who was my best friend, and I lost her in this fierce battle. It's hard. You can't forget about things like that. Sometimes I look at people with a lot of money, and they may have many wives, many women, but we were different. We were very close. And to be frank with you, another thing I wish I had these days is good health.
Well, I wish you good health and many more years. Happy birthday to you, and thank you very much.